Okay, Steve. That is not the same thing, sir. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer, everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so it is the 17th. It's around 11:40 p.m. Texas time, and I've had a couple of comments over the past hour or so asking me if I saw Steve Goncalves' interview over with Banfield, but it's not Banfield. I went to News Nation trying to find it, didn't see anything. This is an interview that he did with Ashley Banfield's Drop Dead Serious channel. The comments are interesting, so yeah, let's get started. And I am listening to this at 1.15 speed, just FYI.
Steve, what was your reaction to the decision today that the gag order will be lifted, but the motions won't be unsealed? Not yet, anyway.
You know,
It's typical, though.
We requested for basically Kaylee, what happened to Kaylee. So I know her sisters want to do a victim statement and address the exacts, some of the things that happened to her. And they basically wouldn't share any information with us.
See, I agree with what he's trying to say. They wanted all of the information for what actually happened to Kaylee so that their victim impact statements, regardless of who the suspect was, okay, let's just take that away for a second, so that their victim impact statements could have specifics for what the person or persons actually did to her, so that it was more on point, so maybe it would actually like trigger something. I mean, I understand the reason why he would want all that information. And that's also a reason why I have so many issues with so many of the families just being like, okay. Because if anything, even though Steve has come out and said a lot of false stuff, has given false information and blamed his lies on the state's lack of communication, putting it, the way that he actually put it, he at least was trying to get answers to stuff and not just like sitting in the background, which is more than I can say for 75% of the families involved here. With that being said, I agree with why he's upset about this, because all of this came to this weird agreement with no details, with no answers, with nothing else given to the families. Now that's going to stop. But what should have been instantly done is the second that this gag order was lifted, all of the families should have been brought into a room and they should have been handed a case file that had all of the information for their child that they would be allowed to have instantly as soon as the gag order was lifted, so that they didn't have to do any more waiting. There's no reason for them not to have specifics of that night. There's nothing else that needs to be held back or anything else. So the fact that, again, it's been a few hours since this lifted, and now here he is doing an interview and he still has all these questions. Why wasn't this done better? I've never, ever, ever agreed with the families not knowing any information. That's been one of the most idiotic things, I think, honestly, of this entire case, because it's not just them not wanting the public to know things. They're not even allowing the people who are hurting the most from these losses know anything. Granted, they've all handled it differently, but it's still not fair that they're just like, it doesn't matter if we don't know what time your kid actually got home. It doesn't matter that we can't actually prove order of death. All of the crap that they've been telling us. So many of them just sat back and was like, okay. I'll never understand that.
On, what happened to her. So I'm pretty used to how ridiculous, not just a gag order, but sealing something that has nothing to do with the victim's rights. It's all about, hate to say it, but it is a lot to do with the media and people being put on cameras and not knowing what to say, or things coming out that they didn't mean to say. Or
that's you, Steve. Yeah, okay.
Just didn't have a good explanation of what was going on. So they wrapped this seal thing around trying to pretend like they're, trying to protect people and doing all that. But they gave out people's initials at the very beginning. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, they haven't really protected pretty much anybody except Bill Thompson's BFF, Molly McDaniel. That's the only person, the DoorDasher, is the only person that there was like this entire mystery around. Everyone else, we had initials. People were able to dig into their information and see who they were. But not the DoorDash driver, not one of the biggest mystery pieces of this entire case. Funny how that worked.
It's just a dog and pony show that we're supposed to pretend like, like there's top secret information inside these docs. It's pretty gross, and we're fed up with it, and we're glad that it's over. And we just, you only got one time to be able to be a victim's advocate and say what you need to say and to address, the courtroom and everyone in Idaho. And they're not gonna let us know exactly what happened. So it's just terrible.
Yeah.
You're gonna go in there, we're gonna make statements, and we're like, we don't want to say anything in it.
Right, they're going to be sort of like, not empty statements, because they're obviously going to be written from emotion, but they're going to be uneducated statements, because they're not letting them know the truth.
Accurate. We want to make sure everything we say is exactly truthful. And, it's one of those times where they could bend the rules, but they don't.
I mean, actually, it's not even a bend the rule thing anymore. The gag order is lifted. The motions that are sealed, the documents that are sealed, why does that have to do with like a finalized case report that the families could have? I don't really think at this point it's like bending the rules or not wanting to bend the rules. It's just because they're being stupid, honestly. They should have found a way to give them the information that they needed. Because look, all of the families knew about Brett Payne no longer working for Moscow PD. Pretty positive. I never heard anyone else mention it before I mentioned it as soon as the hearing was over on July the 2nd. No one else has talked about that. And I could be wrong. One of the family members might have told somebody else. I got my information from a family member. It was forwarded to me from their email that they got forwarded to them from their victim's advocate, who got the email from the prosecutor's office back in April. So obviously the families know how to keep certain things hush-hush. So why couldn't the families have been trusted at this point now? I know all the things with Steve, okay, I know. But why couldn't they have been trusted enough at this point now to get those very specific details of their children's last few moments so that they knew exactly what actually happened? They should have had the files ready to go whenever this plea deal was offered or mentioned, and they had that damn meeting on June the 27th, on that Friday. I was told on the 26th that the next day around noon, they were all going to be meeting. And again, I thought it was because they finalized the date for the trial being the 18th instead of the 11th, and everyone needed to get their Airbnbs and everything all together. But no, it was for this plea deal. Why didn't they offer them something then? I know all too well how much this system just doesn't work.
I seem to recall there was some discussion that the judge was going to meet with families and tell you privately things that were going to be released in the gag order. Is that still a possibility, or
was that said somewhere? I don't remember that.
Is there no discussion of that?
There's no discussion of that. We just,
I didn't think
Shannon
so.
just sent him an email and just said, are you really going to make my clients go through 3 different agencies to get this information that they want to see? Like go through Freedom of Information Acts for...
Bro, the families should not have to FOIA this information the way that we out here do. Bro.
The state of Idaho, for the county of Idaho, and then, there's federal ones as well. There's even other states. So it's like they could make it happen, but clearly the willpower isn't there. I don't think they really want anyone talking to the media and questioning. Remember, these people said that it was a crime of passion, it was targeted, and it was an isolated event. All this language, and then they even said, you're gonna have to trust us. You're just gonna have to wait and trust.
That's actually in the book. You're just gonna have to trust me. You're just gonna have to trust us. James Patterson writes that several times when it comes to James Fry and when it comes to Bill Thompson. Trust me, bro. How about nah?
Us, and now we've waited, and it's like, no. Well, there was no connection whatsoever that we could establish. So how do you get isolated? How do you get targeted? So
now you're finally admitting that all of the crap that y'all came out and said about Instagram and all the other social media stuff was false? Thank you, finally.
I think it's more about covering up some of the mistakes that they made. They don't want to talk about the, destroying the crime scene and
The
how questionable
university.
that was. So they just say, well, we're gagged. And now that the gag's over, you guys aren't going to know exactly what we were talking about during the last 2.5 years.
I can't imagine the frustration that you and Christie's and everybody else who's been directly affected as victims of Bryan Kohberger's hideous, horrific actions. I can't imagine what it's like. I do know that the prosecutor sent you an email leading up to the decision to offer this plea deal. Now that the gag order is lifted, are you able to share what was in that email?
Are you going to tell us about
we
Brett
kept
Payne?
it, but yeah, we could forward it to you guys, and then you guys could share it to your audience.
That being said, after the sentencing, I will do a video on the email that I was sent about Brett Payne no longer working for Moscow Police Department.
You got to put yourself in the position of a parent, read that email, and wonder if that's what you thought was going to happen. And that kind of language doesn't really sound like it's a negotiation. It's over. It's done with, and just get on board. Get on board.
No solicitation for your thoughts, your opinions, to weigh in on the possibility of a plea agreement being offered?
No, it was just basically paperwork. We were asked if we had ever been offered a plea deal or gave one. We said no. He was like,
yeah, so that's the exact same thing that Judge Hippler said at the end of, I think, the hearing in May. It was the last hearing before all the crazy stuff. He asked the defense this exact same thing. He asked both parties this exact same thing. And then literally had a form that he wanted them to fill out. And the deadline for that form happened to be at the same time that all this crazy stuff started, the end of June. So that was interesting.
Judge Hippler said, well, you probably should at least, look into that. And what's that look like for you guys? And we said, we're not in it. We're in it for the death penalty. The choice is he could be fired at, or he could take a shot. Those are the two options that we would agree to. And then we did, we would have, if it would have got to negotiations, we would have negotiated a lot better than Thompson. Thompson negotiated like a 5-year-old kid.
Look, I didn't realize until, not gonna lie, the James Patterson book and all the cases that they're mentioning and going in and sort of looking into some of the history of Thompson, that he's really not this hard ass that Steve had previously tried to make him sound like the book tries to honestly make him sound like the Pullman radio or news guy that was the first local on the scene makes him sound like. He likes to take the easy route. He likes to do plea deals. That's not fighting a case. That's letting people kind of slide. And he does it a lot. And he uses a lot of random ass excuses. Plea deals are not the way to go. I don't give a damn. Plea deals are never the way to go.
He didn't force him to say that he did it solo by himself. Didn't force him to
give any details.
Prove that he was wearing the suit or show us where the sheath, the knife is to the sheath. There's a right way to do things, and then there's just, I want it over with because I want my summer back and I want to go retire.
Yeah.
So that's what we got. We got a pitiful effort from an old man who's retiring and doesn't believe in the death penalty and really had no.
Which I don't understand how you can be a prosecutor that offers the death penalty and threatens people with the death penalty, but not be a believer in the death penalty. And I honestly really believe that statement that Steve just said because of all of the history, all of the plea history. I really believe that.
No right to even be in that room. And it's a shame that we didn't have any other choices that we could have pushed for. We tried. I mean, I tried to even hire a prosecutor. I would have paid to have my daughter in a separate.
He tried to hire a separate prosecutor? I don't know how that would work.
Case with our own prosecutor that we paid for, and not even made Idaho pay one penny, and it would have turned out differently.
That's interesting. Now, I know that he was saying before, I think it was on Drunk Turkey's interview that he did right before the Dateline fiasco. He had mentioned before that there was a possibility that they could have moved just Kaylee's case over to the FBI, make it a federal case. And that regardless of what happened in Idaho, in Latah County or Ada County, whatever, for the charges, that they could still technically charge Bryan with all of these things based on Kaylee's case and like stuff found on his computers and his searches that would put him away for life. That's what he said over on the Pretty Positive. I'm pretty positive it was over on the Drunk Turkey Show. I know for a fact he said it. I'm just not sure if that's where he said it, but I'm pretty sure that's where he said it.
Which leads me to another question. There are still civil avenues open to you, a wrongful death suit against Bryan Kohberger. Do you and your attorney, Shannon Gray, plan to mount any kind of action after this, or are you done?
I'll say this. If Bryan really goes to prison for the rest of his life, I don't see what point this sort of thing would do. Because it's not like he's ever going to have a job to be able to give you a damn penny. And the whole point of a civil suit is normally whenever you don't get your way in a criminal case. I've seen civil suits be filed whenever charges don't stick and people don't go to prison. I've seen it happen in places where it probably shouldn't have been, a situation that got approved and people's lives get ruined over them, But if Bryan Kohberger literally never gets out of prison, this whole thing here is stupid and pointless. Who would honestly need to be the ones to be sued, would need to be the police department, would need to be the university for how they fuddled everything up. There's a lot here when it comes to paper trail they don't want us to see because they know just how much is in there that's going to make them look bad.
I think a lot of their strategy for this sealing and gagging was because they were afraid of the civil actions. But those are mostly have to be brought up within 2 years. And it's hard to bring something up that you're not been able to even look at. Like, we don't even know who made the decision and what was all done. So I think this was a strategy for them to cover.
That's interesting. So even now that the case just got to like a sentencing phase, is he trying to say that Shannon's basically told him that they don't have an avenue to civilly sue Moscow or the university or like any other entity because of the statute of limitations?
Up their tails and the university's ass. And, there's two huge universities there. One, they literally sent the students back saying it was an isolated targeted event. And literally the murder was hired by one of the universities and was literally in a position of power who had already harassed girls. And they hadn't even taken those.
Steve, Bryan Kohberger was found to have done nothing wrong. He wasn't harassing people. There were people that were entitled that didn't appreciate the way that he was grading them. But there were plenty of women. I have clips of their interviews where they're saying these things themselves out of their own faces that were not graded harshly by Bryan Kohberger. As a matter of fact, he greatly enjoyed the way that they did their work, the way that they wrote their papers. And this was before he started getting punished, basically, by Professor Snyder for grading as harshly as he was. Even one of these guys that did an interview in the very beginning that, again, I have a clip for, he's got his blonde hair back in a ponytail. He's got like a red or a weird orange colored hoodie on. Even he's sitting there complaining about all these other complaints that people are having about grading while he's saying, oh, but he graded me just fine. But they're also mentioning how there's men that he was grading this harshly too. So this harassment stuff, none of that's been proven. None of that has been proven. And again, the court documents literally state found to have done no wrongdoing, found to have done nothing wrong, guilty of no wrongdoing. So again, Steve, you cannot come out here and complain about what's happening while you're still out here peddling false information that you have no proof for. You claim you have this Bryan tally thing that you've been talking about over the past few months. Where is this? What is this tally? Or is it just people talking? BK Norton, just a bunch of that? Yeah.
Investigation seriously. So, yeah, there was a lot, people need to look.
No, they took it seriously. He just didn't do anything wrong, and the investigation proved that.
Back when he was fired on the 19th. That's the exact same day that the police said that the FBI told them that Bryan was a suspect.
Oh, Steve, you finally put that together. Okay, I literally just said this. I said there is no way that he got fired before his arrest because of the way that all the verbiage was for everything, the way that they had to trespass him off the property, the way that even in the drafts, guys, in the city of Pullman information, the data dump, the FOIA stuff that I just got the other day, if you missed us going over those live, the thumbnail looks like this and the link for it will be down in the description box. Even the very beginning draft letters from December 30th of 2022, nothing in there mentioned the fact that he was no longer an employee. Everything was he worked as a TA, he completed his first semester, all these things. Nothing about him no longer being there. But I do find it really, 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 really interesting that the day that all these things apparently happened was the exact same day that the feds called Moscow PD. Do you not think that the feds didn't walk into WSU and try to get all kinds of information about Bryan Kohberger? So if he was fired on the 19th, which again, we have seen no actual factual proof of, literally none. Even Banfield over here, whenever she tried to peddle that story, saying that she had some sort of letter or whatever, they never showed the letter. They made like a PowerPoint presentation in their editor's room and never showed any physical proof of what they're claiming to have had. And even in the series, the stupid Amazon series, the media people in there were even saying that they wanted the records from WSU, but they weren't allowed to have them. So hopefully we get some of that information, because I'm pretty positive the majority of his WSU stuff would be part of the case file. I don't see how it wouldn't be. So hopefully we get the answers to all that very soon. But yes, Steve, I found it very, very interesting that those two dates match up perfectly. I'm glad you're finally asking questions.
More than suspicious that, WSU fired him that exact same day while he was out on the, back in Pennsylvania. They fired him. So obviously they heard about what was going on, and it was cover their tails. And
so is that basically like Steve trying to admit in a way that he knows nothing came of the investigation at WSU and that there was no reason for them to fire Bryan Kohberger until they got the information possibly from the feds on 12/19, and then to cover their asses because he worked for them, they went ahead and fired him ahead of time of the arrest, even though the investigation found no wrongdoing? That sounds like wrongful termination, doesn't it? If that's the case. Because again, like I've already said, we've gone over all of the available documentation, and none of it actually points to what they're trying to tell us. But this little portion right here has always been extremely interesting.
That's why we have all this sealed stuff, and we're still fighting for the information to come out when it's just 4 kids that got killed in their bed. There's no top secret information here. There's no national security. It's literally people thinking that they don't work for us anymore, guys. They think that we are lucky to be in that courtroom, and they're like a form of royal bloodlines, and they sit there in that courtroom and they tell us how it goes, and how dare us question them, and how dare us know what's going on, and question what they're doing. And I appreciate the media, because it's one thing an angry dad saying that. It's a different thing for ex-prosecutors to get on your guys' station and say this is questionable, why'd they tear the house down.
So as long as you have a title behind your name, it's fine to ask those questions. But regular schmegular people out here asking questions are conspiracy theorists and a bunch of crazies. No.
There's literally the 1112 video is referencing sounds in that house. So, it could easily be that a jury wanted to reproduce what those sounds would have sounded like on that camera. And they couldn't do that once the house was torn down.
Mm-hmm. Not just that, but if they're going to try to say that he parked in a certain area, or, in certain times he was in certain places looking up at the house, how are they supposed to know or get any sort of inkling on what they're trying to tell as a story? Because up until that hearing that just happened, the plea hearing, we didn't have any idea whatsoever about where he apparently parked. That information came out for the first time as some sort of weird definitive in the Dateline series, who apparently got their information from somebody with, actual access, because now there's still a special investigation going on for this gag leak. So the house still being around, if we would have gone to trial, would have been necessary. Even if people didn't walk inside of it, being around it to see access points, to see the way you would have to drive around, to see where is walkable to get to the house or not, all of those things are still very important. I don't understand how so many people are just okay with the house being gone.
Was there any contact made or any overture at all from prosecutor's office, the victim's rights advocate that's supposed to be associated with you, about the process going forward now in order to find out more information? Have they at least guided you? Will you have a better shot at getting information than someone like...
Did you not hear him? Miss Ma'am, are you paying attention to the person that you're interviewing? He literally just said he was going to have to go in and file FOIAs and Freedom of Information forms and go through all these agencies. Like, he literally already answered this question.
Me?
No, they don't
He
like
answered
us.
this
They
already.
don't like the fact that we question their authority. They don't like the fact that we talk to you guys right now. So I don't think they'll help us at all. They'll try to make it as most difficult as possible because we bring a huge spotlight. You know, if we're gonna read it, we're gonna explain it to people how we understand it, and I don't think they want that attention. And that's probably why most of them have already retired. So yeah,
Where's Judge? I want to know what he has to say.
I don't think we're going to get any help. We don't have a victim's advocate. She's bound by the rules of that court. So if the judge
she's a glorified middleman. If it's the same person that has been the one working with the person that's been giving me information, then they're useless. They literally just act as a forward button. The prosecutor sends them an email. They forward it on to the families. There's nothing else written in the email. There's nothing else. It's literally just forwarded over. Glorified middleman.
tells her to shut her mouth and don't talk about it, there's an open investigation of the leak, and she's a part of that team. She can't talk to us. We brought up the leak in court January 13th. Gray accused that office of leaking the information, and
January 13th, they brought the leak up. Well, that's interesting considering that Dateline didn't come out until May or June. I don't even honestly know, but it definitely wasn't in freaking January. So what was going on back in January that had Steve talking about the leak then? Curious. Obviously, she is too. She's writing it down.
We've been able to prove that we got this. We knew about the sheath and the DNA, CODIS hit, all that stuff before. And you think if there's an investigation, why hasn't anyone ever called us and asked us where we heard it? You know.
Okay, see, that's what I was questioning. I've been questioning this forever now, especially since this damn book came out. Because in this book, it says that Barrett tells Fry on the phone while Fry is driving back to Moscow that a sheath was found and that it's imperative that the information does not get out. And they were really good at keeping that quiet for the most part, except for the fact that people were talking about it on social media that were local to that area. I'm telling you now, if anything in this book is accurate, the Yik Yak for the students, the Yik Yak social media accounts for the students were already ablaze with cartel theories, talking about Emma freaking Bailey, okay, after just a few hours after the Vandal alerts. She was being talked about in the Yik Yak stuff. Again, I haven't seen the files. This is just what's being said in the book. But the stuff about the knife sheath, the stuff about the possibilities, the stuff about all of the rumors that everyone hates so much, that all came from their own people. That came from the students having conversations on a student platform about what was happening. So I've questioned, how long did the families know about the knife sheath before the PCA came out? And that's whenever the rest of the world knew about it. I want a date. I want a date for when they knew.
So there's no investigation going on. They're lying to Hitler if they're telling him there's an investigation. There's no investigation going on because the first person who told you that there was leaks and proved to you by telling you what they've heard, that eventually becomes part of your case. You know, the sheep, we knew about the sheep before it was. We knew about the white car before they released it. They never came.
That's true too, but that's also because people on social media were talking about the white car, again, in forums like Yik Yak, people that lived in the area, and Steve Goncalves hired a private investigator early on and had gotten a hold of some of their own footage. So they did see a white car. They would have seen a white car, especially since they're the ones who had to come out and give us Maddie and Kaylee's precise time. that they got home? Because remember, the Moscow Police Department were okay with it being just close enough at 1:45, when that wasn't true for literally anyone.
Came and asked us who told us that information. They didn't even try. So,
Who was it?
I would never. I'm not going to give that information out. I really respect the people that actually reached out.
See, how am I supposed to believe you, Steve? Because we're sitting here, you're complaining about everything. You're saying, oh, we knew about this and we knew about that, and they didn't even come ask us. We told them exactly what we heard, who told us everything that we heard and everything else, but no one's coming to talk to us. So how can they even be doing anything if they're not coming to talk to us? Prove that they have a reason to talk to you. You saying that you knew about the knife sheath and the white car don't really mean a lot because, again, the university students that were actually there and on campus while y'all were still sitting in y'all's living room were talking about this stuff literally the same day. So that doesn't really mean too much to me, honestly, now that you just made this stupid comment, because why can't you? You don't respect anybody down there. Quit lying. You literally just sat here for the past 15 minutes doing nothing but this about everyone over here. So don't pretend that the reason why you're not saying the name is because you respect anybody. Miss me with the bullshit, bro.
Tried to help us. They're awesome mothers and fathers, and they cared about their community, and they wanted to make sure that this was done the right way. And
awesome mothers and fathers who cared about the community. Are we about to bring up WSU Kim? Because for real, what? For real, what? What are you talking about? People that are not related to law enforcement, that are just mothers and fathers looking out for their community, are not people that give you leaked information. Unless for some reason you're trying to put the fact that they're parents on some sort of weight for the reasoning why you're choosing not to say anything. But again, none of the last 5 to 6 minutes of everything that you just said looks good because of the way that you're answering this question now.
And so yeah, we did know some stuff, but I respect all those people, and I would never give out their information. And they're all safe. Every person I've ever talked to.
I don't believe you,
Steve.
Sense.
You got a loyalty to those who loved you and cared for you throughout this horrible.
I just don't believe you. I don't believe you anymore about that
process. In the interim, I kept thinking along the way there would be things that you know that we don't know, and that you were sworn to secrecy because of the gag order.
So she's stupid? Anyone who's paid attention to the court facts, the court hearings, and the actual reasoning for things has known this entire time none of the families have been under the gag order. I love how she just constantly shows how not smart she is.
Or any other reasons. Is there information you know now that I haven't known and the rest of us haven't known up until today?
Most of the information we found out were just people calling up. I've had other officers call us up and just say, I don't know what just happened in the court today, but I don't support it. People so angry at what was happening in that courtroom that they would literally pick up their phone and call us and say, this is what's on Bryan's phone. This is what he was searching. This individual was sexually motivated. I don't care what.
Look at the camera and say that, Steve. Quit darting your eyes all over the place. And look at the camera whenever you're saying this so that I know if you're lying or not. Oh, wait. It's pretty obvious that you are. What do you mean what was on his phone? You mean all of those devices that were searched that the court, including the state, has already come out and said that there's no connection on any of them? You mean the ones that were forensically downloaded and looked into? You mean all of the social media profiles that were already looked at and they've already been proven to be no connection? Then he's going to blurt out the whole, oh, yes, this was sexually motivated. Why do you need it to be? Why do you and that weird chick from the frickin' Facebook group get so angry when there's no sexual component to this crime? That's disturbing. Y'all should probably look at that.
Thompson said, they've got a plan for him. They've got a job role for that man. And it's not every day that you get somebody who wants to be a police officer, is dying to be a police officer, is literally talking to them every single day about how he was going to be a police officer. It's not every day you get a master's degree in criminology that is going to go into prison. And
he just said, Thompson said, and then continued on with his statement. What this is really saying, and I'm going to leave my original stuff in here, but I'm just interjecting while I'm editing. What he's basically saying is that Thompson has told them at some point, probably a long ass time ago because they don't talk anymore, that Bryan Kohberger was constantly telling them how much he wanted to be in law enforcement, how much he wanted to be a police officer. That's what he's saying, Thompson said. All of the rest of this stuff is literally Steve making things up. But there's already people this morning on Twitter. I recorded this last night between like midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. It is now 10:30 in the morning. And Twitter is already all over the place with people claiming that Bryan Kohberger is a Fed because Steve Goncalves said so. That's not at all what's happening here. Literally not at all. They have a job role for him. So now he's trying to say that because Bryan is smart, this is going this way because they have some sort of job opening up that they want to put this now, with no details whatsoever, any proof at all, confessed quadruple murderer. They've suddenly opened up a job position. What?
They're going to leverage that. That's what they're interested in.
No.
They're not interested in him being locked up in a 23 hours of solitaire where he's not going to be able to have any influence.
Some people think that he's in witness protection, which I don't believe that whatsoever. There's literally nothing to prove that scenario, and I could easily be proven wrong with a receipt, with a paper trail, okay? But people that are just saying stuff willy-nilly and then trying to push it out there and they don't have any proof, it's just an assumption. I have issues with falling to that side. Okay, something else comes up, show me a paper trail, show me receipts for something, then maybe I'll bite. But to me, that whole witness protection thing when it comes to Bryan is just as insane as what he just said about them basically opening up a job for him simply because he had some degree. He didn't finish his doctorate. He didn't. He was in school for it, and then all this crazy shit happened, and then he's done nothing. So I don't know. Everything right here with Steve is just wild.
They want him to go in there and actually have influence and work with them.
And be a resource for crime fighting in the future?
Yeah. His fantasy was to be an officer or
Okay. So they're trying to say that they're going to keep him locked up, but they're going to utilize him as a resource to, like, what, profile other people? Is that... Where is he getting this from? Where in the world is he getting this from? See, this is what I'm talking about. He's sitting here complaining about the state not giving information and even saying, people are going to come out here and they're going to say things that aren't true or they're going to say things in the wrong way, like you're doing right now. This is wild. The
earliest one was like a Green Beret or something like that, a Ranger. So this guy's had like these grandeur visions of himself since he was just a little kid.
Grandeur vision? So people aren't allowed to have freaking goals, Steve? Jesus.
And I think one of the first things he told the officers when they arrested him in Pennsylvania was like, let's get a cup of coffee. I'm working on my criminology PhD and I'd like to interview you. It's like,
and if he's actually guilty, if somehow he was able to magic ninja himself into that house from miles and miles and miles away and do all these crazy things, okay, cool. I'll give that one to you. But what proof have we actually seen of literally anything? That I've never taken out of context. I've always just figured autistic, very specific in the situation, and also very just blunt about whatever is on his mind. So maybe if he's actually innocent, he's sitting in the back of the cop car thinking that after all of this is done and over with, it's going to be an interesting experience to have a conversation about with someone who also went through it. That's a police officer that's in the field. So I don't know if you can take that and try to turn it into whatever they're trying to turn it into right now. But this is a lot. This is a super lot.
This guy wants to be a cop or wants to be somebody of importance. He always has been. And that was part of the reason why we were trying to get them to take that into account and not plead with him. Don't give him the position of power. Basically dictate the terms to him and say we're not going to accept this unless you prove who you are.
Still fascinated by the comment he made upon arrest. Have you arrested anyone else? Thinking,
girl, Brian Inton came out and said that, and then came out and said that none of it could be validated. This was literally mentioned in one of the motions as being a false statement that was put out into the media. And now here she is once again coming out and regurgitating something that's already been discussed.
Is he throwing a red herring in? Is he really curious about other possible suspects? But I'm very curious about what you just mentioned, that coming out of hearings, there would be people who would call you and say, I don't like what's happening in that courtroom. I know what's on his phone. I know. What did you learn from those phone calls?
Let me know down in the comments if you actually believe this statement. If you really believe that people that worked as investigators in this case would personally call Steve Goncalves and tell him this after the hearings. Because this would have had to have been, let's see, way back, I think, still in Latah County, when the document came out that had like 60 something different devices on it, showing that there was nothing and no connections and nothing about the victims on his phone or anything else. He even had the date that Bryan Googled the crime incorrect in his interview. He tried to sit there and say that Bryan Googled it before the 911 call was made. The information that ended up coming out in this so-say Dateline leak, take that however you want to, considering there's an investigation into said leak now, said that Bryan's first time that he Googled it was 11/16, the same day as the very first press conference. So, when it comes to anything that Steve says about this kind of stuff, he's literally the exact same thing that he claims that he hates so much.
Without divulging who it was who called.
He's just weird porn fetishes, but two of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls. And those are two things that were part of that crime scene.
Were in that room? So he's just now saying that there was stuff on his phone in what room? In Maddie's room? And now is he trying to say that there was some gagging and stuff involved? Because that's one of the things that they had to debunk early on, was that people were tied up with gags on. Is that what the frick he just said? I'm going to go back a second.
I don't like what's happening in that courtroom. I know what's on his phone. I know. What did you learn from those phone calls without divulging who it was who called?
Yeah, Steve, let's listen to all these things that you have to say now while you're wearing your God bracelet and your cross hat.
He's just weird porn fetishes, but two of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls.
Okay, so I get what he's saying now. So he's still saying that there was gagging. He is still saying that somebody had something in their mouths in order to stop them from talking. That's what he's saying right now. Bro.
And those are two things that were part of that crime scene. For Thompson to say that there was no sexual assault, of course there wasn't. He didn't have enough time. Somebody came up there. But why are you defending somebody who just killed 4 people? You know, why are you not?
What do you mean? What? Hold up, Steve. Hold the frickin' frack up, bro. You cannot sit there and say that you know for a fact what was going on in that crime scene whenever you have not been privy to any of that information. That's your entire damn argument. So don't sit here and say that people were gagged whenever the cops have already had to come out and be like, no, that was not the case. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Not even making him stand in the courtroom and admit that he killed 4 people. I mean, it's upside down world sometimes when you go in those court systems and they're literally, oh, you've been so respectful. You can sit down when you plead guilty, you know, with a yes and no answer. So,
I mean, I get that, but the crap that you're coming out here and stating, it's the opposite of the case fact. It's the opposite of everything that we've been told when it comes to evidence-wise. And not every little thing that we hear is going to be fake, okay? When it comes to the crime scene and the way that it was laid out, they're going to have to show photo proof of that stuff. Maybe not so much now because of all the redactions, because we're not going to trial, but any sort of like this or being tied up, all of that has already been debunked. And honestly, it's in this book too. So I don't know why he's trying to come out and say this kind of stuff. He knows that the information is going to come out soon. I mean, maybe not soon, but the information's going to come out. So just as we're going through stuff and proving everything false that we've been told and comparing everything, you know that we're going to do the same thing with the crap that you're telling us, Steve. So you've already been wrong about the Wi-Fi and the social media connections and everything else. Is this going to be something else to add to that list? I cannot believe he started this with the way that he started this, just to end this the way that he's ending this. Damn.
we're just glad to be done with it. We're glad to move on.
When you said drunk, passed out girls, gagging girls, was there something that happened at the crime scene involving gagging? that you heard?
Yeah. That's what we've heard. That's why we
Heard
want to get
from
all these
who?
facts straight.
Heard from who? These mothers and fathers who are trying to just protect their community but aren't actually law enforcement? What in the actual hell are you talking about?
So we don't want to have a statement that isn't accurate. But when you have...
What do you mean you don't want to have a statement that isn't accurate? You don't even have any validation or proof that this is accurate and you're out here doing all of this. What do you mean? Bro, I don't understand how people twice my age can act like my damn child. This is so stupid. Oh my God.
a prosecution that just is okay with covering everything up and not telling you what's going on.
Again, you're blaming the state for you coming out here and lying.
It's hard to be accurate. And they've criticized us for not being accurate on certain things.
It's hard to be accurate. It's not freaking hard not to make up lies. What do you mean? It's not hard to not be accurate. Just shut your face. You didn't have to come out here and just say all that stupid crap that you just said and then turn around and say, we don't want to not be accurate, but what? So many words, all pointless.
And it's because we're not getting the facts. Parents shouldn't have to beg to know what happened to their kid the last 20.
Parents shouldn't come out lying about what happened to their kid. That trumps everything else that you're complaining about.
4 hours of their life. We figured out everything that we could. We got the grub truck video before they did.
Olivia apparently got that because she went through Kaylee's messages and her phone contact information while they were driving from California over to Idaho and got a hold of Eric, the private driver, and he's the one who gave her all that info. So she had that, according to this book, she had that information before she even got to her parents' house. So there's that, apparently.
The white car, we got the 112 surveillance even before they got it. We were the ones that tell them to go to these cameras.
And see, remember, whenever he was still talking to Brett Norton and all of this Linda Lane stuff came out, he sent her a screenshot of the 1112 house with the pumpkins that are supposed to be orange but look white in the cameras to say to Brett Norton, everything on Linda Lane, there's noises and things that don't add up, and we have the original. So basically, I have the original audio and I'm not hearing all of these things that y'all are now hearing whenever I'm listening to this one. That's actually by the house. The stuff doesn't, it's not adding up. So we knew that. But sitting there and getting surveillance footage because you hired a private investigator is not the same thing as knowing what happened inside that house. Okay? So the simple fact that you're coming out here and trying to say that they had been in some way is wild. Super, super wild.
Pull them off. I'm sure they already were going to do that anyway, but we got it before they did. So they were just concerned that, they weren't in control and we knew too much stuff. And
did someone with the investigation?
But you didn't know anything because you knew stuff from on the outside, barely, and nothing about what was going on the inside. And y'all noticed that cut right there. That wasn't me. Whatever he said, she cut out, probably because he'd said too much.
Investigation describe that Kaylee or Maddie was gagged during this horrible crime?
I was told that by somebody in I can give that out. That was Babbitt. That was Babbitt who gave that information.
What did she say?
There was some damage to her. There was some damage around her mouth right here, like somebody had pressed in and tried to keep her quiet. She'd been hit multiple times in her.
Okay, Steve. That is not the same thing, sir. That is not the same thing as what you are describing some idiot told you was on Bryan's phone. That's not the same thing. That sounds like how you're describing it, like something that would have happened during the fight that caused all of the injuries, that caused what ended up actually happening. This is not the same as some sort of search that you do on your phone because you want to get your jollies off. No, that's not the same thing, Steve. See, you cannot be coming out here saying the kind of crap that you're saying the way that you're saying it because you're wrong. What you just described make sense to a fight with someone trying to shut someone up in the moment while things are happening, not someone putting something in someone's mouth or putting tape over their mouth. The injuries to Kaylee's mouth right here, according to Steve, that he heard from Mabbitt, was with someone's hand. So then you're trying to tell me that there's no bite marks on the person that put their hand in her mouth? Because I'd have been biting it all the way off, okay? And I really bet that first thing tomorrow morning, they're going to end up having to have some sort of meeting with Mabbitt so that they can try to find out from her exactly what it was that she said to him now that he came out here and said all of this.
Her head and her skull was damaged. We gotta go. So, all right, they're telling me I gotta go, so we gotta fly. We gotta fly out of here.
Understandable. And just for our viewers, Kathy Babbitt is the coroner, so she has spoken with you about these details. Steve, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. I say it every time, and I mean it every time. I wish you and Christy and the kids peace, and I'm very appreciative that you took this time to speak with us.
Okay. That ended because he had to go. She kept talking for a few minutes. Honestly, don't care what she has to say. Steve cannot be coming out here and saying stuff like how they were gagged and it matches things that were searched. But then in describing it, know damn well that's not what the frick he's describing. You can't tell me that at this point this is not intentional. Like, I get it. He's a grieving parent. But that's not an excuse to be a liar. I don't understand how people can't differentiate between what's acceptable when it comes to grieving and what really is pushing the line. And yeah, how dare you say anything about how someone grieves? Well, whenever it's not just them, whenever there's 4 people that have lost their lives, whenever there's all this secrecy and all of this insanity, I am going to have a problem with someone coming out and lying, with telling false information and then trying to dance around the responsibility for it. None of that is okay. We cannot keep having this happen. And again, he came out showing full proof for why the gag order stopped where it stopped and didn't include the families. Because while even though the rest of them have just sat back and really not asked anything, they also are not out here just spreading all kinds of information, spreading false information. It's just the one family that has been doing that. And to this day, like we just witnessed, Steve is not stopping. That whole thing was too much. There's no telling the kind of crazy ass headlines that we are going to be seeing all over the place tomorrow. Or shall I say later today, because it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning on the 18th now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will edit and get this out sometime tomorrow. I am just flabbergasted by what he is out here saying and doing and all the things. But you know what? Again, this has been a pattern. But let me know what you guys have to say about what he had to say down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.